Hey everybody at Camp Assurance, how you doing? This morning I thought I would talk to you a little bit about different languages. Whenever you live in a different country or live in a different culture, one of the questions you get asked is, do you speak that language? And yes, Carolyn and I speak Indonesian, and we're starting to learn Creole. We spoke Indonesian when we lived up in West Papua, Indonesia. But we had to learn more than just Indonesian because there were hundreds of languages around Indonesia. There are thousands of languages in the world, and anytime you go anywhere else, you can hear not just one, but multiple different languages. So we lived in the village of Biri, and we spoke a language called Biriati. But we didn't learn just Biriati words, we had to learn words from all the other villages around us. So for example, when we went to language school, we might greet you Selamat pagi, good morning, if it's morning, but if it's midday, we might say Selamat siang, or if it's late in the afternoon, we might say Selamat sore. Just like you say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, things like that. But we had to learn how to greet people in many different tribal languages. If it was somebody from our village, we would say Daigba. If it was somebody from upriver, we would say Ehokari or Firmama. Or if it were somebody from the village of Taive, we would say Yaki Yaki. Or somebody from the mountains, we would say Wa. Or if they were from the eastern part of the mountains, we would say Halabok. So we had to learn lots of different words. We had to learn lots of different phrases to be able to communicate with people in a way that they found meaningful and intelligent, that they could understand. Now, one of the things about languages that makes it seem hard is that they have different sounds. For example, in Australian English, people have trouble saying R's. We say words with R's very easily, but that's a hard sound for a lot of people to make. I was just in a town called Ngukur last week, and the white Australians can't say Ngukur. They always say Nuka, because they can't say R's at the end of words, and they can't say an NG at the beginning of the word. So different languages have different sound systems, and that's what makes it seem hard. When we lived in Biri, we had a little girl. We didn't know what her name was because our language wasn't based on all the different consonants that we have in English. Instead, it was based on tones. So tones were more important than some of the sounds that you and I take for granted. So for them, an R, an L, an N, or a D all came out the same. We had a little girl, her name could have been Rhoda, it could have been Dora, it could have been Lola, it could have been Nora, or Nona, or Lona. It could have been any one of those things, and in fact they called her different things, and she would always answer because to her it didn't make a difference. The sounds weren't important. But for us, their language seemed hard because it was based on tone. So the same word said in a different tone could have a different meaning. In English, that's not the case. If I say the same words but change the tones, it might change the emphasis that I'm trying. You might think that I'm angry or that I'm happy, but it doesn't change the meaning of the actual words. But in Biri, it did. So the word I meant father, the word I meant to eat, and the word I meant hand. So sometimes we would get frustrated learning language and we would say ay, 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 which meant father ate a hand. Well, have you ever thought about where all these languages come from? There's a story in the book of Genesis about the Tower of Babel, and if you don't know that story, I would encourage you to ask your counselor to tell it to you. It's a story where people were building a tower trying to worship false gods, and God came down and confused their languages and spread them out all over the world. And that's the reason that we have so many languages today. But languages are always changing. They're always adapting, and new information comes, and new words are added. And in Australia, there were lots of different languages. Just like in North America before the English settlers came over, there were hundreds of Native American languages, and there were hundreds of indigenous Aboriginal languages in Australia too. And if you want to talk with people, you have to learn their language. Well, there was a problem back about 100 years ago as all the different tribes were coming together and working with white people, and they didn't understand each other. So the Aborigines of the Northern Territory invented an entirely new language that's called Creole. Now, when the Western settlers first came to Australia, they thought that the Aborigines were speaking just gibberish words. They didn't understand how complex the languages were. But the Aborigines were actually quite intelligent, smart people. So smart that they invented a whole new language that today is called Creole. Carolyn and I have been studying a little bit of Creole because we're trying to learn one of the languages to help us communicate more effectively with people here in the Northern Territory. And so I thought I would read a couple of verses out of Creole and see if you could understand any of it. Because there's a lot of English words in it, some of the words will sound familiar, but because it's a language that they were clever enough to invent so that they could communicate with each other, there's words borrowed from lots of different languages, and it sounds a little bit different. So this verse is from John chapter 10. It's from the Creole Holy Bible. You can see that it's spelled a little bit differently, but because it's based on English, it sounds much the same for a lot of words. I'm going to open up my Bible and I'm going to read a story about Jesus talking to some people. This one is John chapter 10, verse 9, 10, and 11. Jesus said, "You mob sabi? Mina that right one gate, blah go la God. And if anybody come and la me, blah go la God, well God gotta save him. And him gotta gee them probably free, and him gotta ab him that probably good one life. You mob sabi na? That lot ceremony men all day come and blah steal 'em bot and kill 'em bot and binage 'em up bot you mob. But I been coming blah making you mob abum that probably good one life." Well, if you don't speak Creole, that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. So let me read it to you in English. This is John chapter 10, verses 9 through 11. "I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and he will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." See, without being able to speak somebody's language, how can you tell them the good things that God wants them to know? God wants us to have life, and he wants us to have an abundant life, but the enemy comes to steal and kill and destroy us. Those are important words, and language is important to be able to communicate these good things that God wants us to know. Well, that's what I wanted to chat with you about today. I hope you have a good day, and I hope that you talk about these Bible stories with each other and with your counselors. Talk to you later. Bye.